Hi, it's Ravin from Hellohire. Thanks for joining the replay of our webinar with Tiffany Smye, Senior Director of Talent, Learning, and Development with Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. In this webinar, you'll hear Tiffany share secrets on how Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment is streamlining high-volume hiring and solving some of the most complex challenges of today's labor market. And as a bonus, we're offering anyone watching this webinar 1 month of Hellohire completely free. This offer expires at the end of the month, so message me today to claim your free access. Now, without further ado, enjoy the webinar. For anyone working in recruitment these days, we know that time is super precious, so thank you for being here. Our goal is to make this time worthwhile for you, and today we're going to highlight an organization that really needs no introduction. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. It's the company that owns the Toronto Raptors, the Toronto Maple Leafs, Scotiabank Arena, and a number of other sports teams and venues. Similar to many of you, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment has experienced a tremendous shift in what they need to do to attract, select, hire, and onboard new employees. We're going to hear how this organization has adapted to changing market conditions and is leading the way with high volume hiring. What we hope you're going to get out of today is, number one, confirmation that you are not alone. 2, insight into how you can simplify your high volume recruitment. And 3, tips and tricks on what's worked well and what hasn't always worked so well for one of North America's preeminent sports and entertainment companies. If you have any questions during the webinar, please enter them into the chat. And I know there's a number of us on the call today, so if you could ensure you're on mute during the webinar, that would be appreciated. So let me start with a bit of insight into who I am and why I created Hellohire. So I'm Ravin Shah. I am a serial tech entrepreneur based in Toronto, and I'm the founder of Hellohire. Our mission is to make recruiting more efficient and more human at the same time. And we solve some of the biggest hiring challenges in today's competitive labor market, like not seeing or getting enough qualified candidates, not being able to reach them, and ghosting. As a special thank you for being here today, we're also offering everyone a free month of Hellohire in an unlimited capacity to everyone watching here today. And so we'll drop a link in the chat if you're interested in claiming that free month. Now, please allow me to introduce formally to you our special guest, Tiffany Smye, Senior Director of Talent, Learning, and Development at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Tiffany is an HR leader who is passionate about creating engaging and equitable employee programs that optimize business outcomes and foster an inclusive environment. Tiffany, welcome. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what the world looked like when you joined Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment?
Yes, and thank you, Ravin. Thanks for the introduction. Like I said earlier, I feel like there should be some sort of arena music in the background. I should be walking on stage. Yeah, we'll do the drum roll later. So I'm Tiffany Smye. As Ravin said, I'm the Senior Director for Talent, Learning, and Development at MLSE. What that means is I cover the portfolios of recruitment, talent, learning, and development, and recognition. When I joined MLSE in spring 2021, I want to set the stage a bit because this industry is totally new to me. I've professional services, FI in my background. I had started my career in exec search. I'd gone to campus. I'd then gone into tech talent, eventually becoming an HR leader for a Canadian financial institution. And when I joined this industry, and for those of you that aren't sitting in Toronto on this call, I joined in government restrictions. We still had no fans and stands. So it was May 2021, and I came into, I had a leader, our Chief People and Inclusion Officer, who I'd worked with before, ton of respect for Terry Dennis Davies. And I said, why not? what an exciting time. And like everybody else who'd gone through, the start of the pandemic, I couldn't wait to be part of an organization that was bringing joy back to my community, right? Just the thought that we would be together again in person. But again, let me set the stage. We weren't there yet, right? So I joined, I was excited, and didn't realize through either the naivete of not having worked in the industry before and the ebbs and flows of recruitment that we typically see in this sort of high volume seasonal workforce. But also, I just had no idea what had happened, the impact to the hospitality industry, right? And so I came in May. We didn't have fans and stands. And suddenly, it was government restrictions started to lift. In the fall, we started to get, the kind of inkling towards that. And this joy that I had been waiting for, bring the communities back, I was suddenly facing it as a recruitment leader that needed to fill 500 part-time hourly positions like this, right? And I say that because this was a group. We have, 10 venues that we own or operate. We support our teams. We were coming back into the NBA, NHL season. Everybody was excited to be back. Again, only a few hundred fans at first, but even still, we needed to support our operations, and we just didn't have the ability to do that. And this was not a business that typically leaned on third party, right? We were not used to this. And then you think about those volumes. We had laid off, for the most part, our part-time hourly workforce.
Right.
And we had laid them off, and they had found other jobs. So it wasn't simply an invitation to welcome them back to the most exciting business in Toronto. It was an invitation and then a conversation because we realized our staffing shortages. So it was a bit of a Goliath effort, right? And it wasn't the only portfolio. And at this point as well, we had one recruiter. So there was myself, there was one recruiter, and this is a business who has never had a full-time, COE for recruitment, right? On the managers typically manage the recruitment on their own. They did it with in-person interviews. And imagine they're now in the weeds trying to cover because of the resource shortages. And they're also going, how do I recruit in this new way of working? Because I can't have people come in. And when, we were thinking about it, we were requiring vaccination confirmation. Like there were so many hoops, right? So this is, now I'm starting to feel the overwhelm. I'm back in it. Like where we were.
It was a crazy time. I mean,
Yeah.
It was, and I get it. It was wild.
It was wild. And that's when we met, right? We met in the fall of 2021. And I would like to take credit for the fact that I found, Hellohire. It was our HR team was doing recruitment up until about October 2021. And obviously their, HR business partners had a lot on their plate. And I went, okay, well, how can I help? And in addition to the volumes of 500 plus hourly, we also had unprecedented attrition like everybody else coming out of, the curve with 65 salaried permanent roles and the one recruiter. And so I started to think about it, and I actually did the math last night about this. So even if we had like 80% conversion, we would still have had to conduct 600 interviews and like in-person interviews at the time, because that's all we knew. 20 minutes, say, for an in-person, which is like a short in-person once you've come all the way down here on the TTC or GO train or you've commuted in. That's 12,000 hours starting out our NBA NHL season. Like you just don't have that time from a business perspective. So I wish I'd found you. I didn't. HR introduced us. And by the time I was introduced to you, we were coming up on our first career fair, which is how we initially used Hellohire. And it was October 2021. And it was a 4-hour virtual career fair with over 1,000 folks invited to attend. We had 600 interviews in 4 hours. And I think we made about 400 offers out of that, which we'll talk about because offers are different from hires. But we made about 400 offers. And that's when I knew that was the power of it. 600 interviews. That's the power of the tool. That's when I realized it, because it was suddenly, we didn't know how we were going to get past this. And suddenly we had an opportunity and a tool that could help us with it. So yeah, that's where we were. That's where we
Yeah.
were. And that would have been, a year and a half ago.
Yeah, no, I remember that event well. It was an exciting time for MLSE. It was an exciting time for us as we learned, about the market, about the needs of, of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, and we're able to kind of, offer a solution. It was amazing. But what stands out for you most about this pivot to virtual? Because I think that was the sort of the introduction was really towards a virtual way of hiring. So, tell us about that pivot.
Well, this is an in-person business, right? So, like pre-pandemic, nothing was virtual. We didn't work virtually. There was no work from home days. We are in the arena. We operate. We can engage with our fans. So there was no, work from home happening, no hybrid, up until the pandemic. And we had pivoted so well in our community efforts. I mean, we hosted massive events to support our community during the pandemic. So we knew how to pivot. What it showed me was the ability for us to pivot yet again. So yes, our employees had adapted to Teams and Zoom and WebEx, but now the ability for us to have these conversations to solve our recruitment problems was really interesting. So that was the first thing. The tool gave us access to the market again. I don't know how we would have, because again, Toronto was a different situation than many other regions, right? People were not leaving their house. People were not comfortable. There were government restrictions around how you would host this. So you simply couldn't have even 100 people in a room for a career fair. It was against our government restrictions at the time. So you also have to think the changing candidate behaviors. There were a lot of people that were still very nervous about the pandemic. People were really needing a huge, pull to leave their homes. And here we had this tool suddenly where, like, early days, and still sometimes, but like, we were meeting people in their house. They were at their current jobs, with their mask. I have interviewed people who are on the bus. I've interviewed people from the grocery store. We suddenly had access again. And what I liked about this too was our brand is super strong. You mentioned a couple of our teams. I will say, I love the Argos. I love TFC as well, in addition to Raptors and Leafs. But people would know of us and come to us. But suddenly we were able to reach diverse talent who weren't as familiar with our organization, who were, though, very interested in work, from either our concession stands to our restaurants to housekeeping, to our gate staff, right? So the diversity that we were able to see, it wasn't just about, I've always wanted to work for the Raptors, which is an important part of this, but I have the skills. And I actually want to work for a business that values the skills. And so I really like that diversity play in this sort of accessibility that we opened up. The next was the reduction of time to plan our events, virtual and doing this link. So I say that there's a bit of a buzz in the office today. So we are having an in-person career fair today for our concessions, for quick service, we call it, which is our concession stands. So we are hiring, some concession cooks, bartenders, kiosk servers, and seat runners. If you're in the business, you'll know all these roles. So we're having it in person. And I think what it shows you, and that we don't just pick one format, it also shows you it is very hard to change behavior internally. As a business, this is a change management effort.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we've gone from in person, everything happens in person. Switching to virtual hasn't been, an easy run for us. It's been very successful. And so the data's shown them we want to do this again. But we have an in-person event today. And the amount of effort to pull this together for 4 hours has been, it's eye-opening. I mean, this is our third in-person career fair. We did one for the restaurants. This is our second for quick service in the past year and a half. We have 30 people scheduled for the next for these 4 hours. When we arrived today, I kept hearing this beat coming from the arena. And I thought, oh, who's rehearsing? And even though we had cleared our clubs for this career fair, it turns out one of our partners is in here doing a skate and they're playing music in the arena super loud. We've had to change our venue to another club. move all of our printers to the club because we're not digital, we're in person.
Mm-hmm.
And we're meeting about half of the candidates that we would meet with this many people because of the in-person format. So, you know, and I honestly think it's a bit of an inconvenience. I think now it's not just the 20 minutes that they're spending with us in this in-person career fair. They've had to get here. They've had to park, which is a huge cost if you live in Toronto. I don't even like to do it. And again, they've had prep calls. We've had interview training for more people because we're asking people who don't do this on a routine basis. So I would say, all of that to say, what you're hearing in my voice is the pain that in person continues to be. But again, it's an option, right? And in this market, we need all the options that we have. I also think that in-person events, what you're going to see today, I am facing more, and for anybody on the call, give me a reaction, a hands up, don't clap because it's terrible. The amount of ghosting we're seeing in high volume recruitment, I've never seen this before. And talking to others in the industry, we are seeing a lot of no-shows. Or we're seeing people that, show up to the interview, even put all of their stuff into Workday, and then they don't show up to work. They don't show up for their training shifts. They don't show up for their first shift, or they start showing up and then their availability drops off. So what we're seeing is we want to recruit more because there's a lot more waste in the system. And for ghosting, for Hellohire in particular, Ravin, your algorithm, and this is where tech boggles my mind. I don't know how, but you let me schedule interviews for 20% more candidates,
Right.
depending on the job. We find more there are certain roles that ghost more than others.
Right.
But you let me interview 20% more, almost because it counts into this algorithm, this 20% that just ghost. And if they all show up, somehow we're still able to get through all the interviews, but unfortunately they don't all show up. So,
Right.
the algorithm works. But yeah, it's been a real eye-opener switching to this virtual option. And as I say, we've got, proof is in the pudding. We've been able to see that comparatively as well to how we've been managing our in-person events, which haven't gone away. And I will say too, there are some groups where in-person is still needed.
Right.
And we've talked about this a lot because I would do anything to solve for it through Hellohire because it's so much easier on my team. But for cooks, where we have to do cooking tests, for
Right.
bartenders, where we have to do a bartending test, I think that has been we still do that in person, one-to-one for them. And it's a white glove in a way that, you would never expect for these types of roles.
Totally. I think what we're learning as well is that there's no one size fits all. And in the market we're in right now, as you said, we've got to try different things. And, there is, I think the biggest difference is you've got a great brand. There is a brand following. We will have people, or you will have people show up for your in-person hiring events. And especially, with the strong brand that you have, but we can't rely on that. And I think it's also, you can't do that every week or even every month with the operational sort of overhead. And so having that, showcasing the employer brand, in addition to being able to have an agile process throughout the year. And again, it's not like we're hiring once and we're good for the season. There's attrition, there is backfilling. It's a constant, again, we constantly need to be hiring. And so having multiple tools in the tool belt is not a bad thing.
Yeah, and you talk about behaviors. I'll say this, and I'm not sure how many are experiencing this in the work that they do. And I know some of my MBA colleagues are on the phone or on the webinar, but I also see differences in terms of how, once we do hire them, we are seeing a reduction in the number of shifts, and we're seeing an increase in absenteeism.
Mm-hmm.
And those are issues that we're facing as well. And so, it feels a bit like quicksand some days, because I would love to say, when I start looking at the volumes and the data, which I've been doing a lot of lately, as you know, I've been saying, how have we recruited this many? And yet we're still, we're in such a better place than we were, but we still are, we've got triple headers coming up, and we're going to have to rely on third party for either BMO Field or Coca-Cola Coliseum or Scotiabank. You know, we still have this reliance there that is much greater than what we saw before, which was basically only to cover absenteeism at about 3 to 5%, right? But now we're seeing this change in behaviors. And that's one thing where when you talk about being able to have multiple tricks and tools, and I'll talk about that at the end, because I know everyone's spending time with us today, and I don't want to just talk about, you know, the things that we've seen, but how are we taking that into action, and what are the sort of focus areas for us as we move through this year, because I'm hopeful that this will be a year where we see things normalized a bit from a business perspective. But it's, yeah, the changing behaviors, and we don't have enough time under our belt yet to see if these trends are forever trends or not. But I do want to just, I keep thinking about this one recruiter that we had. We are still now we're probably about 350 part-time hourly positions, only because we're heading into what is typically an influx where we have all of our teams running at the same time. And we still only have 2 recruiters. We have 2 recruiters. We now have 2 coordinators supporting those 2 recruiters, and managing, you know, 60 salaried positions and this 350 hourly. So we're still very much in it. I see a question in the chat. Is this why a lot of the hiring for stadium jobs is outsourced to companies like Staff Shop? I would say, I mean, I don't think anybody's unlocked how to do that. I'm not familiar with Staff Shop, so I will get familiar after this call with that and do a little bit of a Google search there. But I think that we are finding third party. We are looking deep. It was interesting. I had a conversation with a third party staffing firm the other day, and I said to them, I don't want to use third party. I don't want to outsource my recruitment. I want to stabilize it. And I think that's where I see the usefulness of tools and platforms and Hellohire, because I can do in 4 hours, I can do in 2 hours, you know, what used to take us days and what took us weeks. Now I can solve for the recruitment bit. The onboarding is still something, I mean, if there are any great onboarding tools out there, not that I want another technology added into this, but we still need to, you know, simplify it so that we can ultimately make it as easy as possible to be a candidate. And I think Hellohire has absolutely done that for us.
You bring up a good point, and around onboarding, because it's not just about, you know, obviously there's attracting the candidate, selecting and hiring, but you gotta, like, that entire process has to be, like you said, fluid, easy, simple, to get to the finish line, right?
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And I think that once we unlocked one bit of it, it's like kind of just, again, going down the rabbit hole. Oh, well, we got high volume recruitment figured out. This is great. Oh, but why aren't we seeing it translate? Because our onboarding, they're doing drop-offs. And somebody asked about pay. Yeah, like I'm finding across the board, and I will say not just with our high volume, but even with salaried, we're seeing people take on more roles, take on different responsibilities. And if you're asking for them to do a minute more and paying a cent less, you're no longer competitive. This is a candidate-driven market, and it really surprises me. And I'll say it's interesting, like when we talk about the things that we're experiencing, like don't get me wrong, the old problems still exist too, right? So we were talking about ghosting earlier. The old problems still exist. So, you know, nothing can solve for unqualified candidates that are saying, oh my goodness, I can't wait to work for the Raptors. Well, you know, you simply don't have the experience for this role or that role, and let's, you know, find you the right one. I would say that, you know, one of the things Hellohire has helped with us is the logistics, right? Planning. But again, when we need to pivot and do it in person too, still a nightmare. And then I think that, you know, candidate experience matters. And so you have to put in the time after the fact to get them through that finish line. In today's world though, I can't believe ghosting. I can't believe, you know, resources to support. Our hiring managers simply do not have the time that they used to. Right. Because they're covering, or they're bringing in third party and having to train them in a way that they didn't have to. And again, candidates need a compelling reason to stay. every day. And so I think as well, our managers are having to take a lot more time, not just with the onboarding, but then also with nurturing the relationships with their staff, the recognition piece, which we
Right.
did a very good job of before. Like, this is a company, like, there's a magic to MLSE, but there is also that's no longer good enough,
Right.
which I like sometimes, still boggles my mind. So, like I said, you need to make it easy for a candidate. You need to understand that your employer brand is no longer the big draw, right?
Right.
And you also need to make sure that you have a commitment to, you have to say what you do, and do what you say, right? And so with us, we've been out in the community talking about diversity, and we need that represented in the way that we hire and the access that we provide for people to be considered for our roles.
Totally. I like that, there is an acknowledgement of like the old problems that still exist. There's new problems that, we're seeing in the current market. How are you tackling these sort of problems? What do you see as the clear needs in a solution for the market? Um,
I think you just have to make it as easy as possible. And you've pushed me on this, actually. So, for those who aren't familiar with Hellohire, and I saw somebody ask about the ATS because that's been an opportunity for us as well. I mean, we needed it tied into our ATS, and you made that happen. Again, I'm not the tech wizard here, so I don't know all the things that made it work, but now we can actually, like, the ATS, we invite candidates to our Hellohire events because they've applied for jobs. We could get around that and just have them go through Hellohire, and then automatically when they sign up for an event, they come back into our ATS. Like, either way, you can get it. You can front the candidate experience however you want. And I think
right.
Hellohire has made that easy. But the push that you pushed me to, which again took time, because as much as I talk about how hard it is to change the business and their behaviors, I find it hard for myself as well. I was very much they apply for the job, then we screen them, and then we invite them and we move them through into the categories of our ATS. And then after we decide, we meet with them virtually, and I think that when I describe the app, it's as simple as we send them a link, we customize our page, and we can host event over event over event, and it discerns it in reporting for us in a way that I'm not explaining very well, but it does very well. So you send the link to candidates, they sign up for a time, the algorithm chooses the time so that they know exactly when they're coming. They answer whatever pre-screening questions I put in that we do so that they don't duplicate. And then literally as an interviewer, you pop on for the 2 hours, and it's like a back-to-back Zoom call. And the person is not waiting for you. They're waiting for whoever can meet with them, whoever is the interviewer that's available. And then as you meet with them, you're saying, is it a yes, a no, or maybe? That's what we do on our side. That's how we configured it, with some notes. And then all of that goes back into, oh, we have these candidates, they've applied for this job, and we hire them through our ATS from that point on. It's so much more simplified. So you asked about how are we tackling this? How are we making it easy? I think that, again, we need it to be as easy as possible to be a candidate. Here's a link. So now I had the conversation this morning. We're just going to send the link so 2 areas of focus for us have been security officers,
Right.
because we have hundreds on our roster. So security officers for us, and our concession stands, our quick service groups, have been a huge focus for us, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But with security, we should be able to just, you signed in, you've registered an interest, or we just post on Instagram the link to Hellohire. They basically sign up for an interview. They've been knocked out if they're not right from a screening question perspective, and then we meet with them. All they've had to do is sign up for an interview, and suddenly we're connecting with them. And our average interview with Hellohire is about 8.5 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
So it's like in 8.5 minutes, and they've already gone into the site and seen our welcome video. They get jazzed up for security. We give them a video about like, hey, this is our day in the life. So they get all of this stuff, and then they get the interview, and then they get the job. And somebody's just asked about the union. So how are we tackling the priority list?
Mm.
Right now, we've got a 100 person gap on our roster. And so yes, the unions, there's a seniority, but we have a ton of shifts that we are still giving to third party. We need more people. So we are not increasing our roster range. That's making, like, we work hand in hand. We have over 10 unions within MLSE. And so we work hand in hand with our unions to make sure that we are doing everything possible. We do not have the staff to meet our roster ranges right now.
Thanks, Tiffany. I think you kind of reminded me of a high level sort of conversation we've had, and I've had with a number of employers that do hire in high volume. And that's really, our systems and processes traditionally have been built to screen candidates out to protect our time, because it's always been an expensive thing, right? Like if I'm going to have 30 minutes for an in-person interview, I want to make sure that I'm spending that 30 minutes with the right person. And so we do everything we can to screen people out. But that is that's what's causing us the most strain right now, because we're screening too many people out. And so when we model an open interview hiring process where you invite more people, and in many cases, anyone who is interested in the job, and then you qualify them using your pre-screening, like your automated pre-screening, and you spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or like you said, an average of 8.5 minutes with each interested and qualified candidate, the results are just, you have a wider pool of people to pick from, and you're able to connect with these individuals effortlessly for them, for recruiters, and it just brings everyone together. But again, it is a, like you said, change management, right? It's a different way of thinking about recruiting and opening the doors to a larger group earlier on in your process, knowing that it is operationally actually going to be more efficient. But it is definitely a mind shift.
And it's interesting because you talk about the reduction of interview time, and that always makes me nervous from a diversity perspective, from like an equity, diversity, and inclusion. I get very nervous. Even when I said the 8.5 minutes average, is that enough time to assess somebody for the skills? And I know we're talking about part-time hourly, and we're talking about high volume. And for some of these roles, I mean, Smart Serve is about all that you need, or, food handling certificate or something like that. But I don't want people making quick judgments. And when you talk about change, one of the biggest things and that we've done organizationally is to talk about inclusive hiring and to arm our hiring managers with unconscious bias training and language around, entering into these conversations and understanding what you can and cannot ask. And when you bring a video interview in that 8.5 minutes, I'm telling you, I've had people join me from their bedrooms. And Ravin, not everybody is as neat as me. It's hard to believe. But you can look in somebody's face, or you can say, oh, you're calling me from a TTC bus? Like, like old school, it's like, well, they can't even, find half an hour in their day to talk to me. No, not in this market, right? People, this is the challenge. You have to get past that and have a real conversation. But you have to make sure you've trained your hiring managers to mitigate bias in this process, because it doesn't matter what people's homes look like. It does not matter. You have to make sure that they feel comfortable in a virtual environment. And a lot of folks don't. I have people who don't have even the technology to do Hellohire interviews. The great thing is they go to the public library. So we connect actually with people at the public library. And I understand when I see that background that it's a free service provided, but they might not be as familiar. They might not use this tech every day. So how do we get our hiring managers? And again, I'm not using 25 hiring managers like today's in-person event. Our events, we typically have 3 interviewers. Somebody asked if you can do small groups versus one-to-one. Yes, you can do anything like that, right? This tool you could do, at first we started to host, you can do like a room. I think you can, Ravin, I'm not talking out of turn here. And we had booths and things that you could do as well. And then the one-to-one interviews, it has this little timer and you do it live with the person. It's not pre-recorded, but I prefer the live anyways, because you're spending as much time. And instead of having a pre-recorded and then going, why did that person do this? In the meantime, I'm asking them. And the benefit is if you've got the right training with your hiring managers and they're meeting a person live and they're asking the right questions, if that person doesn't have the skills for the job, you're declining them right then and there.
Right.
You're not wasting any further time. They're not going into a black hole and wondering where they are. I am encouraging my hiring managers to say, I'm hiring for this role. We're always hiring. This role, you just don't have the experience for this.
Right.
I think you'd be a better fit. Here's the job posting. Guess what? You have a chat function in Hellohire. We just send them the job posting that we think that they're more aligned with.
Right.
And they know right then and there. And they've done application. Oh, this was easy. I just signed up for an interview. I got an interview. I met with someone. They helped steer me in the right direction, or they said that I was a yes, or I know that I'm a no and why.
Right.
And then you're done. That communication with the candidate is clear. And again, on the back end, do not underestimate with recruitment the amount of training that you have to do with your managers. Doesn't matter somebody's background. It does, like where they're calling in from, what their video looks like. If they're not answering questions, probe, make sure they feel comfortable with the technology, because there have been some great people, but not everybody likes that format. Not everybody's comfortable with it. Not everybody has a tidy house, and not everybody's a great interviewee. And so you really have to nurture the call in that 8.5 minutes.
Totally. And having consistent questions and a framework for how to evaluate candidates, that always helps as well, right? So it's interviewer to interviewer, consistent with the training that you're providing. I know this has been an amazing conversation. We've got some questions we want to answer. Tiffany, can you summarize for us, as we jump into 2023, what are the top 3 things anyone that hires in volume should be thinking about, should be doing? Love to kind of hear you close your closing thoughts on high volume hiring in 2023.
Oh, see, this is when I do not have a crystal ball. And if you ask me what my thoughts were for 2022, like I had no idea it would be this hard. Right. And you started this session saying, I want everyone to know, you're not alone. And for everybody out there in high volume recruitment right now, like these meetings, these conversations are so important to say, yeah, we're all faced with it. So if you want to send me a note afterwards, we can solution these things. I love talking about it, because I don't think anybody has that crystal ball. But I think a few things that I am focused on, and what I see happening this year, and where we're going to sort of prioritize, is just make it easy to be a candidate. Absolutely. Number one, don't make them jump through hoops for an interview, right? We've talked about as well, creating a human connection, right? Everybody went off, everybody's virtual. I thought people would be sick of virtual. This connection in these interviews has just been phenomenal. And what I love is I meet somebody in a virtual interview, and I've had more people when I'm here on an arena night or an event night come up and say, hey, I met you online, like the Hellohire event. Like it's been great. But because it stands out to them, because it was awesome, right? Yeah. Not because I'm awesome. The process is awesome. And I think that we all need to, it could be both. Yes. I think we need to understand though that candidates are in the driver's seat. So make it easy is my number one. Second, review your end to end. There is not one magic tool out here. Hellohire is helping us a lot with recruitment volumes, to the point that now volumes and getting in touch with people aren't the issue. It's like we need to just be a little more selective so that we can really white glove it, make sure we're not doing the ghosting. Our onboarding, we're seeing a lot more. We need to create space and time in our business so that our department, our hiring managers can make sure that they're, getting the uniforms, the access cards, all of those things, so people aren't left in limbo wondering what's going on. So reviewing the end to end. Don't just look at this and say, Hellohire is a great solution. It's going to make sure you're ready for it. Because when we went to that career fair and interviewed 600 people and had I think it was 400 that we said yes to, we didn't even know how to do that. We weren't ready to process those offers. I, again, had one recruiter. we didn't know what to do. And that was a big eye opener, and I don't want anyone to go through that pain. The last one is then take that always on multi-format approach. I think that we are closer to solving this gap than we've ever been before. Last night I was at Real Sports and 11, two of our restaurants, and I was going in to talk to the chefs, and they're like, Tiff, we're okay, we're good now. Like, this is awesome. And I know concession, so I wanted to share, we had a concession attendance event last week, or when was it? January. One event, it was like 2 hours, 32 offers for concession attendance. Like Crystal and one other hiring manager, 32 offers, 2 hours, boom. That was like more than half of their needs in a 2-hour session, right? But I think, they're also doing today, they're solving for the gap. They won't want to talk to me because they'll be like, oh, we're done. I'm going to keep prompting them. I'm hosting another Hellohire event in 6 weeks from now. Because even if it's just 5 more offers, I need to get it within a manageable level for my unions and my CBAs to be okay. But for me to make sure there's safety in the roster, because there's a lot of behaviors that are net new around shift availability, absenteeism, and things like that I need to account for. Right. So make it easy to be a candidate. Review your end to end so you don't make, you don't come across the same things we do when you've got success in one area and then a huge unexpected challenge in another. And then take an always on multi-format approach to whatever you're doing. And get sleep and drink lots of water. It's a bumpy road.
Live life without those. Those are winning formulas. So Tiffany, thank you. Your insight has been super valuable. It's clear that high volume hiring is harder than ever, and solving the complex challenges of today's labor market really requires a shift in the way we think about recruiting. But again, it's refreshing to know that we're not alone in these struggles and that we can learn from strategies that are working for Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Tiffany, thank you for sharing your experience and knowledge with us today. And thanks to everyone that tuned in to learn from an expert.
Well, we're learning too. And Ravin, I have to say, your offer of 1 month, that's a surprise. That's awesome. If you're on the call and you're doing high volume recruitment, take Hellohire up on this. Where was that offer? But that offer is amazing. I also saw someone in the chat ask about ATS. They don't have an ATS. I'm assuming they're getting emails for resumes and things like that. You don't need an ATS. Like, we use one with Hellohire, but you could actually just do screening questions like an ATS. Like, do the ad the way that you want to, put the Hellohire, and you're blasting through virtual interviews with someone, giving them an email after the fact. So only the ones that you want to offer, but in the registration, they put their emails. So you decide you want to offer them, they're giving you their emails, you're reaching back out to get a resume and to give them their offer letter. You actually don't need an ATS with this tool because you're hiring based off the link and screening people out, not over email, where I'm telling you how many people say, yes, I live in Toronto, and they don't. And they're not here, and they can't, start a job next week. The screening questions in Hellohire for the person, and it was up somewhere in the chat, if you can't afford an ATS, or if you're not getting support for an ATS, use this tool for 1 month and see what you can get, because I think you don't necessarily need both. We happen to have both because we've got, sort of it on both sides, salaried and corporate, and our business is massive, but you could just use Hellohire. I could definitely see that working.
So Tiffany, why don't we can go through the chat and maybe answer some questions. If anyone, when we come through your question, if you feel like coming on video and having a conversation, feel free. And just quick reminder, we'll drop a link in the chat. So anyone who does want to take advantage of Hellohire, for a month, absolutely free, all the bells and whistles, unlimited usage, all you have to do is book an intro call with that link before the end of the month, and we'll give you that month for free. And as a special thank you for being here. But let's go through the chat. I think there was a ton of really good questions.
Simon has one I wanted to answer. Hi, Simon. Nice to see you. One of them was around how do we make time to sell the organization? So the best part about the registration page is I send the link for Hellohire. They go to the registration page, answer the screening questions, and then in the event, they get access to our sizzle reel, any videos that we want to upload. So I used a Vimeo account, got some videos and hyperlinked them. I plopped in a picture of it actually, like, I'm honestly, it took me half an hour to set up a page that now I just clone for every event. And I just changed the hyperlinks depending on the department. I could actually do a much better job of what we've done to date. I honestly, this organization, the sizzle is so
Oh
like
yeah.
awesome. And I could do a much better job of doing that in virtual. I just honestly haven't probably looked at it for a few months. I will do that now. But it's really easy. People go in and they've watched the sizzle. By the time they get through the interview, queue, or come in and meet with me one-to-one or one of our hiring managers, they've watched the sizzle reel. There's a FAQ about our roles. There's, hourly rate information, all of that stuff. So it's all settled and they know that they're there just to meet with us. So we actually find in the interviewer, like, I'm like, hey, how's it going? Okay, let's get into it. Because they don't have as many questions. They understand what they're here for. There's also tools. They have like a video that they can watch about how to do the one-to-one interview, so that, like, it's a Hellohire video. And there's an outline of like what's next after you meet with us. So they know everything going into the interview. We get through what seems to be, yes, a very quick interview, but it's
Right.
literally the same questions that we ask in our in-person. It's the exact same interview assessment,
Yeah.
except it takes us 8.5 minutes as opposed to 20 to 30 minutes in person.
Right.
Great question though.
Totally. Sure. I'm just gonna go through and kind of pull out a few that were from the top. So we talked about the outsourcing of to agencies. Do you think it's because employees have multiple roles and will take the shift that pays more? So I think we're talking about attrition and employees who have multiple jobs
Or
and
ghosting.
yeah,
Ghosting.
and your absenteeism and attrition. Is it because there's other jobs that provide more hours and more pay? Are you finding that to be a reason when you have people leaving?
Yeah, I mean, hospitality is very challenging right now. It's part of the reason that our back of house for our restaurants still does in person. Because
Right.
if we don't have them here and they haven't done their workday while they're sitting with us, they will literally walk around the corner. And I mean, our union agreements, our hourly rates are our hourly rates. There's no bend. And they will go around the corner to the next restaurant who doesn't have a union, right? Small restaurants all over Toronto, and probably make a couple more bucks. Now, there's a different edge, right? Like here, I mean, the perks of being here,
Right.
the opportunity to be here, the growth opportunity. Our executive chef at one of our restaurants, 11, started as a concession cook 25 years ago,
Wow.
right? What we do, our chef de partie for Real Sports is going to be an internal promotion. Like, there's a lot of opportunity here, but cash in back pocket after the pandemic, when there were no jobs for a year and a half, of course, we're losing
Right.
candidates all the time. And so I would say that it's there, but I just find this fluctuation in this market. Like, it has to stabilize. But I think we're going to see this, for my prediction is another 2 years. And I laugh, I know you're laughing because I reminded you the other day, we did our Hellohire event in October 2021. I went to the board of MLSE in November 2021 and said, I think we'll be fine. And our workforce will be back up to our 100% roster by March 2022. Again, I now am going back to them realistically. We've got probably about 18 months, 2 years left of this. I think we're
Right.
going to see it, and hospitality much more significantly.
Totally. And there was another question around related to this, which is how are you elevating the experience for candidates and hiring managers to make sure they show up for the first day? Like, post offer, is there that you're able to do to drive, you know, them showing up on their first day?
We've had to stick to them like glue.
Right.
Honestly, it's until you're in the arena and you work your first event, and there's something to be said about it, right? Like
Right.
it's very difficult. And it's the one thing that we're still finding challenging, right? And so we have, in the meantime, we have 3 part-time hourly coordinators that have been staffed specifically to handhold now for our high ghosting areas, from the point of, we think you're great, we'd like to offer you, to then, because they've got to get through criminal background check, which is the only check we have, as well as an employment verification. But the criminal background check, if there's any issue, and people know this who are in this, if there's one issue with the way the name is spelled, or a middle name, or the name is really familiar, there's additional forms. And somebody's going to be like, I could just walk around the corner and no criminal background check
Right.
is needed.
Right.
But again, it's a different offering.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are having to stick to them like glue, and we have had to resource that within our business to help ease the load of our hiring managers. And there's a comment here too, like, our restaurants are okay. Does that mean dishwashers? Anybody in hospitality knows we're never fully staffed on dishwashers. Okay, that just doesn't happen. If you have the magic trick, you host the next webinar,
Yeah.
because we are always looking for dishwashers. So yeah, if you know them, send them my way. Send an email my way as well.
Mm, I keep hearing about dishwashers. It's something surprising, at least living outside of hospitality.
My nephew just got a job up
Mm.
north in a town of 5,000 to be a dishwasher for $25 an hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
So like,
that's
these are the things. These are the
yeah.
things that are happening. It's the shock of the
Yeah.
system.
Okay, well, I know we're running out of time, so I want to go through a couple more questions. I saw one from Ernesto. Do you use text messaging interviewing or a chat bot? I think I'll answer it from the Hellohire perspective, and then maybe you can answer it from MLSE's perspective. But what we kind of advocate for is to not add more friction for the candidate at all. And so, a text messaging chat bot, AI conversations, we're more of like, invite them to the interview. If they're interested and qualified, let's have a conversation, and really driving to that point. We do, however, work alongside chatbots. And so other customers have had that chatbot qualify, or at least introduce, hey, would you like to interview virtually, and then drop in the Hellohire link. But yeah, so we as a product don't really advocate for the chatbots, but we can work alongside them. Tiffany, how about from the MLSE side?
We've had a lot of pressure. There's a lot of tools out there that do the text messages. And I know McDonald's is one company that uses a system that you text and then go back and forth. With one link, I suddenly meet with somebody in person. And I think as for, the best practices of recruitment are you're building a relationship with the candidate, and the hiring manager is building a relationship. And as much as this works in some ways, it just doesn't do that as effectively as creating that connection. And I know it sounds funny because I'm talking about creating connection over virtual, but it is different. It's different from a text. I can ignore a text. I can be dismissive of someone. And again, this is one link, and suddenly the next thing I know, I'm in a conversation with a person who is in a hiring position, and I know who they are, and I can look them up on LinkedIn, and I know their name, and I know how to hold them accountable at the end of the day when it's not a great experience.
Right.
Which, it's interesting. I haven't had anyone email me about the virtual experience not being ideal. I still have a lot of in-person not ideal. I waited for 20 minutes. They got, pulled into a meeting, or they seem distracted, or this or that. There's something to be said for, I'm here, I'm dedicated, and I understand what your needs are, and let's make this work.
Totally. Brian asked, is this all live interviewing, or do you also do pre-recorded? So again, from the Hellohire perspective, it's all live, it's all face-to-face. The only thing that is pre-recorded is the explanation of the job to the candidate. And so that's where, instead of your recruiters doing the same spiel over and over and over again with every single candidate, that's what gets recorded once. Every candidate will watch a consistent overview of the company and the job before they go into their live, real face-to-face interview.
So, and is it Brian Lick?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, hi, Brian. So we use both, and where we use them is different. So for high volume recruitment, live. And I like it because you can give feedback real time. And again, I am in it. I can see the person. I am accountable for that conversation. I'm making a decision within that interview and letting them know the decision within that interview. For salaried, we do, when there's, high volume, we do, when there is a high number of candidates that have applied for a single job, we will use sometimes a tool that we have that's separate, that is video interviews. And that is to get rather than having 12, 30-minute phone screens, we do that. And we're receiving mixed reviews, mostly positive. But yeah, I would not do pre-recorded video interviews for this type of high volume, because at the end of the day, you're still going to have to get back to them. They're still in the process. And as I said, the number one thing for high volume right now is make it easy to be a candidate, take them out of the black hole, make the connection real. So I like the live version.
All right.
I'll just add to that real quick, because I like the idea of like being able to kind of like vet out talent a little on the front end too, right? Like I'm sure I'd be curious, Tiffany, do you guys see much attrition in terms of like candidates that are going through that informational gathering phase in the beginning, converting into interviews, or dropping off if they see, like, is that the first touch point they're getting as far as like hourly information, kind of expectations of the job, things like that?
They've applied to the job. So I still, in the most part, they apply to the job and then I send them an invitation for the interview. And I would say that then they get, hyped up because they go to the site and they see everything while they're waiting for their interview. One of the things you said was interaction with the candidate and screening. And I'm trying to think about like, yeah, I think I just want the interaction with them to be in that moment, and to give them that feedback and to let them know. With screening though, we do ask a number of questions, like anything that is a must-have, like whether it's to lift 50 pounds or that you need a bartending certificate, we ask them in the screening question. I don't see drop off between those that enter the site and those that we meet with. It's typically like 199% of people that come in. The drop off is probably about 10 to 15% between the number of invitations we send and the people who actually come to the event. So we see drop off between, here's the link, please meet with us. But we see that for in-person as well. We've just sent out a number of in-person interviews and we're seeing the drop off come for that as well. So it's probably, I would have to do the math, but it's likely equivalent.
Good deal. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. We're at the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of everyone's next Zoom meeting. But Tiffany, thank you very, very, very much for sharing your wisdom and insights with all of us today. And thanks everyone for being here. We really appreciate it. And we'll send out a recording shortly so that if anyone missed it or would like to share it, you'd be able to.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Ravin. And enjoy. Happy recruiting. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you.